My name is Tracy Gillis, and I am the practice lead for Business Central here at Encore. Here is today's agenda. We'll be talking about Dynamics NAV upgrade, reimplementation, reasons to select either option, and then a quick closing comment. Companies using Dynamics NAV can choose to upgrade, re-implement, or do something in between, such as a hybrid approach. Today, I will focus on the difference between an upgrade or re-implementing NAV. There are pros and cons for each option and distinct reasons why you would choose to do one versus the other. My goal is to explain the details of each option so that you and your company can start to discuss and explore which option is best for your organization. A Dynamics NAV upgrade is a technical process that essentially takes your data from NAV that is run through development tools that massage that data and then fits it into Business Central. It's very much a technical process that is essentially lifting and shifting your data into Business Central. Customizations do not convert using these tools. That means that all customizations need to be identified, and an evaluation process will need to happen to determine whether or not these are needed going forward. If the decision is to bring the customized functionality forward into Business Central, then those do need to be redeveloped. This can range from check formats to actual data processing customizations. We have found that often some of the quality of life customizations don't necessarily need to be redeveloped, as it's entirely possible that a customization in NAV may have an equivalent out-of-box functionality in Business Central. A good example of one of these customizations might be approvals. Did you have to program and customize for purchase order approvals or general journal approvals? That is functionality that currently exists as standard functions within Business Central. Another example is the ability to email remittances to vendors for EFT payments. Older versions of NAV did not have core functionality for this, so it was a customization. Again, this is now standard function in Business Central. Another thing we do when we're talking about these customizations is if the functionality isn't available in Business Central, there could currently be an add-on that serves that specific need. AP automation is a good example of this. Was a customization done for scanning and importing vendor invoices? There are several apps available for Business Central that do that functionality now. We also find that about half of the customer reports are no longer needed, or customers take the opportunity to introduce a reporting tool. So for example, if you have 6 complex customer reports, it may be more cost effective for you to invest in a reporting tool so that you can maintain, develop, and analyze data utilizing your own internal resources and experts to address your reporting needs, rather than have us redevelop these reports. Now I'm going to talk about the high-level steps for an upgrade. There are several steps, and we always want to go through a testing process first, which means that the first step is to actually create a test server and restore a backup of NAV onto it. We want to make sure that we are isolating any of the upgrade processes from your existing environments. The next step would be for our technical resources, our developers, to install the set of migration tools from Microsoft. Then we go ahead and perform the code and object upgrades. During this process, each step of the upgrade is timed and tracked so that we have an idea of the length of time it will take to go through this for your final upgrade on your production database. Once the technical component is done, we also need to reproduce any customizations and create these as an extension. In Business Central, we cannot inherently change the core functionality code. So we have to create an add-on or an app that we refer to as extensions. Along with replicating customizations into an extension, this would be the time in the project to implement any other add-ons. Do you have integrations where Business Central needs to integrate with an outside inventory system? Or are you using an outside warehousing tool? Or perhaps EDI invoicing? These will need to be set up in the new environment so that they can be tested. When all of that is ready, then the Encore team does validation and testing. We do things like record counts to make sure that everything is brought forward, as well as run through some standardized testing like comparing GL, AR, and AP balances between NAV and Business Central. We also do functional testing. For example, can we create a purchase invoice? Can we post a sales invoice? Can we run your depreciation routine and process transactions without any errors? We go through this testing to make sure that everything looks like it's functioning normally, which of course includes testing any customization work we have done. The next step is user training. This user training is focused on introducing your users to the new environment. It's not a fully immersive training process, as you likely will not need a full retrain because most of the functionality that is in Business Central will continue to work in the same manner as it did in NAV. A good example of that would be payment journals. The Suggest Vendor functionality screen in Business Central functions the same way that it did in NAV. So we don't need to retrain you on how to use that. We just need to show you how to get to it. Same thing for, say, creating a purchase invoice. In NAV, you have a purchase header and you have purchase lines. Business Central works the same way. Did you utilize purchase orders where you posted multiple receipts? And then, based on your business process, you invoiced those receipts using the Get Receipt functionality. All of that functionality is available and works the same in Business Central. The next stage then is user acceptance testing. This is by far the most important part of any project, and it's a critical step that will pay dividends that results in a smoother go-live process. It's critical to have a robust test plan with documented use cases. You want to make sure that your subject matter experts are actively involved in testing things. And this is also the stage of the project where your trainers will train the remainder of your staff. Once we've had successful user acceptance testing, then the next stage is to actually plan the upgrade for the live database. As I mentioned previously, we record and track how much technical time it is actually going to take to run this process. As well, while supporting you through user acceptance testing, we may find that there are some documented steps that we need to do once the final upgrade is run. Perhaps we need to go in and make some configuration changes or make some adjustments for user security. Planning for all of that and what your downtime is going to be will be critical. Once all of this is determined, then we actually perform the upgrade on your live database, and you are live in Business Central. We will, of course, support you during that go live process. And generally speaking, we continue that support for your first month until you get through your first month end. Then we transition you back to our fantastic Encore care team. We often get questions about what a timeline for an upgrade is like. It can be impacted by several things. The more modules you are using, the longer your testing stage is. The number of customizations that need to be reproduced. If it's a handful, it doesn't extend the project too terribly long. The number of integrations that need to be refactored. Those don't necessarily extend it too long. If there's more than 2 or 3, it does have an extension. In general, a typical upgrade is approximately 4 months. Now it's time to discuss what a reimplementation is. So this process is essentially starting a new implementation from scratch. We will migrate master data records like your customers, vendors, items, chart of accounts, etc., along with GL net change balances and subledger open balances like AR, AP, fixed assets, item quantities. In this process, no historical data or customizations are brought into Business Central. Just like in an upgrade, customizations would need to be evaluated and refactored or reprogrammed. We call this a reimplementation because the concepts behind Business Central are essentially built on everything you know about NAV. Learning the concepts of a new system is not really required here, as you already know how components like dimensions or how value entries are attached to item ledger entries. You already know how all of this works. This path to Business Central provides the opportunity for you to reimagine and optimize what you already know and love about NAV into a fresh environment. The high-level steps for reimplementation are the basic steps for any kind of implementation. It starts with the analysis phase. This phase is the opportunity to essentially fit your new business processes into Business Central. Through multiple discovery sessions, we learn about your business processes and work with you on how to implement those into BC. We explore if there's a new functionality you want to implement. For example, is your approval process still paper-based or email-based? Can it be transitioned into the new standard functionality in Business Central? Perhaps you need a collections tool. Perhaps you need to implement emailing customer invoices. All areas of your business are up for discussion and explored for how best to use Business Central. We identify gaps or customizations in this phase and determine what the options are for meeting those needs. That could be development work, or it could be an add-on, or it could be an adjustment to your current business process. The next stage is the solution modeling stage, and that's where we actually spin up and start to design and configure Business Central for you. This is where data migration happens via Excel templates. It's also when we start to execute on customizations or add-ons and essentially get the environment ready for you for the next stage, which is the deploy stage. In the deploy stage is when we do user training, and just like in my previous comments for upgrades, user acceptance testing here is just as critical. You want to have a robust test plan, have a great team who are able to dedicate some time to the project. Generally speaking, you will have identified changes to your business processes or procedures, and this would be the time to test those out and create clear documentation on your new path forward. It is also the stage where your trainers train the rest of your users. The last stage is, of course, go live. This is when we data load your balance forwards for customers or vendors or quantities, along with your final monthly net changes for the general ledger. And this is again done by Excel templates. When talking about timelines for re-implementation, it's impacted by similar things to an upgrade. The more modules you are using, the longer the testing stage is. Customizations need to be reproduced. Integrations need to be refactored. The biggest factor is the introduction of new functionality or business processes. During the analysis phase, you will be determining what those might be, and the impact of introducing new things is that more testing and more training will be involved. In general, a typical implementation is approximately 6 months. The last topic is the reasons to do one over the other. What are the reasons to select the upgrade path rather than the implementation path? Are your business needs and requirements or processes essentially unchanged since your original implementation into Dynamics NAV? If you are on a relatively newer version of NAV, this may be true. Are the master records, like your chart of accounts, your dimensions, your customers, your items, in good shape and not obsolete? Is your transactional data accurate and still relevant to you? A reason to do an upgrade is that you rely heavily on historical transactional data. Do you have significant activity that's happened in your item ledger and it's critical to your business process, or is needed for integrations to an outside software like a warehousing tool? Is long-term historical information for your customers or vendors critical to your business analysis process? Another reason to consider an upgrade would be if some of the customizations that you may choose to bring forward via redevelopment, is there a large data component involved in that? In which case, there may be a need to bring it forward via an upgrade. In general, the reason to choose the upgrade path is that things haven't changed much in your world. Your data is in good shape, and you're essentially wanting to get to a new technology in an environment that's going to be familiar without really changing anything. Reasons to re-implement. Your business needs, requirements, processes, etc., have changed since your original implementation into NAV. Is perhaps a line of business on the revenue side been eliminated or expanded significantly? Are there regulatory requirements that are impacting your need to update, or new technologies like scanners for inventory? If you are on an older version of NAV, say like 2013, then you've been working in an environment set up based on decisions made a decade ago. Does your historical data no longer offer insight for your evolved reporting needs? Or is it not in good shape? Another big reason for considering a re-implementation is your data volume. Do you have a huge volume of data that is no longer relevant to you because of how old it is? Is the transactional information in your customer or item ledger impacting performance for both analysis purposes and running reports? Many of you will be familiar with the item valuation report and know that that report can take a long time to run because it's very detailed and is looking at a lot of transactional entries. Is it time to consider re-implementing so that you can have a clean data set without years and years of transactions behind it? Another point to consider Are the decision makers that designed your original NAV environment no longer around? The reasoning behind some of the decisions that were made during the original configuration and implementation may no longer be valid or even understood. Lastly, you want to immediately take advantage of the new technologies or functionalities in Business Central. Since the reimplementation path starts with an analysis phase, there is time within the project to plan for and implement things like workflow approvals or new reporting tools, or even implementing a new module like perhaps fixed assets. In general, you want the opportunity to reimagine NAV into a new technology. Starting fresh with a reimplementation is the opportune way of doing that. The next thing to consider is, what are your options for data that is left behind? With respect to an upgrade, essentially, all of your data is being brought forward into Business Central, and there really is no data left behind. Most companies will continue to keep that physical environment running with one license so that they can continue to log in, but essentially all of your data is brought forward. With a reimplementation, you would want to consider the options for historical data, as that is not brought forward. Like with an upgrade, you can leave it where it is, keep that physical environment and limit the licenses so that it's not costing, and then access it as needed. The other options are data warehousing the transactions that are of value to you. There's several different tools or add-ons which are designed for this. PopDocs, Azure Data Lake. It can even be as simple as exporting the data that has value to you to a SQL environment. There are a lot of different options here. It's just a matter of how you may want to access that data. In conclusion, determining whether you want to do an upgrade or you want to re-implement is a big decision, and Encore is here to help you evaluate the pros and cons for both options. Upgrade pros, you keep your historical data. Your procedure and processes stay as is. Shorter timeline. A con on the upgrade side is the missed opportunity to optimize. For reimplementations, a pro is the opportunity to optimize and change. Another pro is immediately taking advantage of the new functionality and technologies. Another pro would be the fresh start with data volume. A con is that it is a longer timeline. As I said, we are here to help you evaluate the pros and cons for either one of these options, and we're happy to have those discussions with you. Thank you very much for your time today.